Thank you so much. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is a Redmond City Council study session held on Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, commencing at 7:01 p.m. All council members are in attendance tonight, as well as Mayor Bernie. There are 2 items on the agenda tonight: police technology update and council talk time. The draft 8th amendment to the council rules of procedures has been removed from the agenda following council direction last week. The first item on the agenda tonight is a police technology update. Here to kick off this item is Police Chief Darrell Lowe. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President. For tonight's presentation, I'll start with the Redmond Police Policy, Section 341. For the public, our entire policy manual is available on the website, redmond.gov/police, and you can see our entire policy manual. So policy section 341 deals with public safety, technology, and governance. At a high level, the purpose of the policy is to respect privacy, civil liberties, and public trust, and to make sure that it's consistent with both state law, city policy, and our accreditation standards. The policy covers all public safety technology, and it indicates that it will be used solely for law enforcement purposes. The storage of data, the storage and retention of data as it relates to the public safety technology, it is CJIS, which is the Criminal Justice Information System Data Security Standards, as well as the city's cyber insurance carrier requirements. And those are the standards that we use to protect data from unauthorized access or breaches. Generally, the data is not stored for more than 30 days. However, we comply with the state's retention policy. So, for example, one of the first technologies that we'll discuss is body-worn cameras. So that technology, per state law, is kept for 90 days if it's not associated with the case. So all of our retention, like I said, is generally 30 days unless state law requires us to keep it for longer, or if it's associated with a criminal case, in which case that data is retained throughout the I'll say prosecution of the case until that case is resolved. That data is retained because that is evidence, and it is also part of the discovery process, which is all of the information that we have to provide to the defense in that particular case. As far as the review of data and who can access it, access to all of these systems is logged in through password-protected systems, two-factor authentication. As I said, it is CJIS compliant, so it lives within our network, which has the two-factor authentication and essentially the one sign-on. So when you sign into the city's network system, it requires two-factor authentication. Data systems that we utilize are, I'll say, behind that wall. So two-factor authentication is a standard to get into the system. Therefore, it transfers to those systems that we use because it's behind that wall, if you will. As far as accessing the data, there is an audit trail for any searches that occur within those systems. So again, it's password protected to get into it. It then logs a date and time that the employee or the officer goes in to search it, and all of those systems require a case number and a reason for the search. So as part of the audit trail, we can go back and see who searched what, when, and for what reason. And that is again, the overall framework and policy that covers public safety, technology, and data systems. The first system that I will talk about, and I have a couple slides for you, just a high level for you to go back and review later. It contains the high points of the system, and that is our body-worn camera program. So all commissioned police officers are issued body-worn cameras. It's a device, looks like this. It's a audio and video recording device, typically worn on the officer's chest or lapel. It is activated on calls for service or any action, any type of police enforcement action. It also requires the officer to notify the individuals that they're being audio and video recorded, also consistent with state law. It is against the law to surreptitiously record an individual without their knowledge. So even though we are the police and we are in a public venue, the officer will say, you're being audio and video recorded. Individuals do have the right to request not to be recorded, and so that is something that the officer must also consider depending upon the type of interaction that they're engaged in. The video from it is 1080p high resolution. There is a buffer in the system, so the body-worn camera system also coincides with the in-car camera system. So in our police cars, we have in-car cameras that record forward, so the typical dash cam that you see. We also have one interior in the car, which records inside the back, what I'll call the suspect area. So if a person is arrested, the back area where they are transported is also audio and video recorded. Inside the vehicles, when the camera is activated, there is a red light indicating that the cameras are on, similar to what you would see on a television camera or a studio, that type of thing. So again, there is no peekaboo. A person knows that they're being recorded as indicated by that camera. As far as the storage of that, all of the videos from both the body-worn and in-car camera are uploaded into our digital evidence management system. It is a encrypted, cloud-based storage system, and then as I previously mentioned, it is retained in accordance with state law or with the particular case that it is associated with. As far as the materials from the body-worn cameras, they're used in a number of instances. Obviously, to support investigations. It's also used for uses of force. So all uses of force are documented and reviewed by a supervisor at the ground level. We also have an internal review process where it goes through a review committee, and then ultimately it works its way up the chain to ultimately be signed off by myself, the chief of police, to ensure that it is consistent with both policy and law. It's also used in cases as far as for evidentiary value and also in court. So body-worn cameras are a huge both accountability and transparency tool for both the police department and the community because, again, it records, what occurs in real time. So we're able to go back and look at it both to, I'll say if there's a complaint, we can utilize it. We can also utilize it to exonerate an officer. As I said, we use it to review all uses of force, so it also is helpful in early intervention and identification if there perhaps is a problem, performance problem, consistent use of force type of problem. We're able to go back and look at it in real time. One of the other benefits for it in that transparency piece, it also allows for complaint resolution. So if a complaint is made, we can then go back and review what actually occurred, what was said on both sides of that particular encounter. The transparency part with the community is, I'll say, a huge feature and plus of it. We talked about the public records and disclosure part of it. That I would say if there is a downside to body-worn cameras, that would be the downside to it, because if you have multiple officers on a call, then you have multiple videos that would have to be redacted. And so if if it's a significant call, you have 4 or 5 officers there, you have 4 or 5 different perspectives of it, which is a good thing. But then when it comes to public records requests and those types of things, that translates to staff time for the redaction of it. So if I were to say a downside to it, that would be the one downside, just the staff time it takes for redaction purposes. So that kind of covers the body-worn cameras, like I said, at a very high level. Council President, you had indicated you wanted me to go through the slide decks and then have questions at the end, correct?
Yeah, Chief Lowe has 2 other technologies he'd like to discuss, and then we can move forward with our questions. Thanks.
Maybe. Come on. There we go. The next technology to discuss is our Drone as a First Responder program. We went live with a pilot for this program back in April of 2024. We were the first department in Washington to have a full-time Drone as a First Responder program. We have recently expanded from the initial 3 docks that we had to 7 docks located throughout the city. We're able to respond to calls and get there within 90 seconds or less. All of the pilots are commissioned police officers, so we have a commissioned police officer overhead in less than 90 seconds providing real-time awareness for the ground units responding. The video from the drones can be pushed or broadcast to any computer, phone, et cetera, so it allows for command and control as well. And probably one of the biggest benefits to it, and about 18% of the time we're actually able to cancel the ground unit from that response, keeping them free for other calls. So there can be circumstances where we get called to a location or to a scene. It's not criminal activity. It doesn't require police interaction. So the drone's able to get there, observe that circumstance, and then cancel the ground unit, like I said, freeing them up for other calls. So as far as the technology around the drone, same thing, the same policy applies. There was a lot of conversation at the start of the pilot program about transparency. So the drones are not used. We do not fly proactively. So we fly only to calls for service. I allow the pilots to fly to any call for service. So if a call for service comes in and it's in a appropriate I'll say circumstance or use for the drone, they have authorization to fly on that particular call. The camera is pointed at the horizon on I'll say departure and return. So when the drone launches, camera faces the horizon. As they arrive at the call, the camera will then rotate down and then provide that situational awareness for the things that are occurring on the ground. Once the drone is returned to home or brought back to the dock, the camera again returns to the horizon, so it's not capturing any images or information going to or from calls. The technology also has thermal imaging, so it has a infrared camera, so at nighttime we can utilize that, utilizing heat signatures to provide that information and circumstance for the officers. That is also very helpful. We have a number of videos on our website, on the police website, on the drone section of some of the success stories. One in particular using that thermal imaging was an elderly individual that had wandered away from home, was experiencing a medical emergency and was sitting down in raspberry bushes. Officers that walked by him, not seeing him, it was a thermal camera in the drone that there was a little dot, and when they zoomed in, they realized it was the top of his head, and we were able to find him and get the paramedics in. So extremely helpful. The other technology that it has in it is collision avoidance. So it has the ability to see objects, be it power lines, trees, et cetera, so as not to crash. There will be additional conversation with the council in the coming months as it relates to other drone usage, i.e. commercial drone delivery, which is something that is on the horizon for here in Redmond, and some additional technologies that will be necessary for the city moving forward in that space of drones and drone delivery. As far as the infrastructure, we have two pilot stations within the police department where the pilots operate from. The system is integrated into our CAD system, which is the computer-aided dispatch system. So when the call for service comes in and an address is put into the system, bless you, it automatically geo-verifies that location, puts in a longitude and latitude, and the drone is able to autonomously fly to that location. It still has a pilot in control of it, but essentially it push a button, launch, it will go to that latitude and longitude, and then the pilot can maneuver it as necessary once it gets there. As I mentioned, it does have live streaming capability. And then much like the body-worn camera, any video that is captured from the drone is automatically uploaded into our digital evidence management system, and it's correlated to that particular call for service. And again, we do not fly just for random patrols or anything like that, so every flight is associated with a specific case number or call for service. Additionally, on our police website, we have a DFR dashboard, which is a public-facing dashboard that updates in near real time. I believe it's about a 25 or 28-second delay in the update, and it will provide real-time information for the public as to the types of calls that we've flown on. As of today, we've flown on 455 calls for this year, as I said, with a sub 90-second response time. And then right now, year to date, we're canceling ground units at 25%. The 18% number was the total number for last year, but right now in the first quarter, we're at about a 25% rate of cancellation of ground units. As far as the use cases for it, there are a number of use cases. So while this is a police department program, it does have uses for other city departments. We have flown for the fire department on active fires and on mop-up for hotspots. As I said, we have a drone has a thermal camera, so we're able to fly after the initial fire is put out, use the thermal camera to provide imagery to the battalion chiefs so they know where the hotspots are. I mentioned the missing person, and there are a number of other types of calls where the drone has proved to be very useful. We have a significant incidents of retail theft, and a number of times the individual does not realize the drone is there. So we have great imagery of individuals walking out of stores with shopping carts full of stuff or arms full of stuff, which is very helpful when we present the cases to the prosecutor for that. For prosecution purposes. We talked about some of the use restrictions, the transparency. Anything that goes into the air is covered by the FAA. So the FAA has a number of rules that we comply with in order for us to have our program. One of the highlights I'll say is it's called a beyond visual line of sight waiver. So we're able to fly the drone autonomously without having somebody standing on a roof actually watching it. We were the second department on the West Coast to receive that authorization, and then we are currently awaiting word back from the FAA on what they call multi-to-one authorization. So a single pilot would be able to fly multiple drones at the same time. And then because the systems are autonomous, as I said, the drone has the ability to go from a dock to a location without human input. So what's next for it? Like I said, we're looking to integrate, I'll say better, more and better with other city departments. Drones are oftentimes used for infrastructure inspection. Granted, we don't have like utility lines and those types of things, but there are things that we could do and assist other departments with. Our wildland fire vegetation aspects is one of the areas that can be assisted with. If there's a sinkhole or something like that from a public works perspective, we can provide them information so they know what equipment to send out. And then there are other drone platforms for pipe inspection and different things like that. And there has been some preliminary conversation with other departments about an expansion of, I'll say, a drone, the drone usage citywide. And that is that one. And we have one more. All right, automatic license plate readers. Oh, come on, where? I don't want to share it that way. Come on.
While the chief brings up the next presentation, I will note for the council that a few minutes before the study session, Chief Lowe also distributed these PowerPoints for our reference, so you do have them in your inboxes. Looks like you're ready to go, Chief.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so automatic license plate readers, obviously a big topic of conversation as of late. We're going to talk about them in I'll say, three different types of kind of broken it up so we can more clearly discuss their usage and I'll say and understand the different usages. So in essence, AOPR, so it's automatic license plate reader. So it's basically a high-speed optical recognition system that uses cameras, infrared illumination, and AI character-driven recognition software to capture and process vehicle license plate information in near real time, often cross-referencing it against other databases. So in essence, it's a capture process. It has a queryability and then an alert. As far as accuracy, the read accuracy is about 98% on the system as far as it actually capturing the license plate portion of it. So the first usage I'll talk about is what I'll call investigative usage, and that is your fixed automatic license plate reading camera or system. So we'll call it what it is. So this is what's commonly referred to as the flock type of system. That is one vendor of this type of technology. There are other vendors that have a similar fixed license plate solution. As we talked about before, it allows for suspect vehicle tracking, stolen vehicle recovery, locating wanted and or missing persons, and it also allows for crime pattern analysis and geofencing of investigations, i.e. if you have a crime in a certain location, you can look for the vehicles that were in that location at a specific or specified period of time. As far as the crime pattern analysis portion of it, if you have a known suspect vehicle that is suspected in a series of crimes, you can utilize this fixed type of technology to create timelines and put vehicles in, I'll say specific locations at specific times because it is a point in time data point. Again, we talked about the stolen vehicle recovery part, the Amber Alert, et cetera. So that is what I'll say we're calling or putting in the swim lane of investigative uses. With those, you have the fixed, the infrastructure part mounted to a pole, light pole, et cetera. The other type are in-vehicle or mobile and vehicle-mounted solutions. As I mentioned, we have video cameras in all of our police cars. Those cameras have the ability to have license plate reading technology activated in them. We do not have that activated in our cameras. For me, it came down to a choice between, I'll call it the randomness of the police vehicle being in the right place at the right time, versus a fixed solution that would identify the, I'll call it, suspect or vehicle of interest at that moment in time. There are also other deployment applications, and think of temporary or portable trailers. If you've traveled on 405 or I-5, a lot of the construction, they're using portable license plate readers for speed enforcement through construction zones. So the same type of thing. We've seen, speed trailers, et cetera. Again, our trailers do not have that technology activated, but that is, for a purpose of example, what a portable or temporary solution might look like. The other common type of AOPR is for parking enforcement. And I will preface this with you will get an additional and more detailed conversation around the parking enforcement license plate reading in a subsequent council session when we bring forward the award of contract for our new parking enforcement technology and piece of it, but this will at least scratch the surface of it. So oftentimes in the parking enforcement component of it, it is mounted to a vehicle. That vehicle travels through a city, through the different zones. It captures the license plate. It timestamps it. It GPS verifies it to within 3 feet-ish of the location. the officer or parking enforcement person makes their rounds, it comes back. If it recognizes that that vehicle is still there in violation of that particular zone, it will notify the officer, and that's how parking tickets are pretty much done across the board nowadays. I know we joked a couple weeks ago, chalking of the tires no longer happens. So it is all automatically generated. It also allows for permit zone enforcement. So when an individual pulls a permit, and if it is a permit zone enforcement, it will cross-reference that license plate with the fact that that person has purchased a permit for that particular area zone. The vehicles that don't have that are not, I'll say, registered or are not cross-referenced, then those would be subject to violation. It is, as I say, about 10 times more efficient than marking tires, much more efficient with the improvements in technology. If a vehicle moves, I know we have an issue in the city of if the vehicle's within that same block or the same 100 block. So this technology will allow for, I'll say, less errors and better enforcement of those things. The other aspect of it would also be for school zone enforcement. For school zone enforcement, I know that there has been a project approved. I'll give an update as part of that. We spoke with the vendor today. They've worked out the issues that they were having with the court, and they are moving forward, and we are on track for installation and deployment by the end of the school year. And again, we will have a specific update on that particular program at a later time, but that's an update update on it as to where we are as of today. And so that's the other typical usage for license plate reading technology is for those school zone or work zone enforcement types of violations. And we'll stop there. Same thing as far as the data retention and the access controls. Those are all governed by the policy that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. And with that, and lastly, I guess it's the House Bill 6002 related to our state law for license plate reading did actually pass. And as for reference, I'm sure you guys will all pull the actual bill to read it, but it has come out. So it is a 21-day retention period from the law perspective. Audit trails a requirement for registration of your system with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office will have until July of next year to come up with a model policy, and then agencies have to adopt a compliant policy and submit that back to the Attorney General's office by December of 2027. For the program that we had that is now paused, our policy will be compliant with that. It would simply require registering our system with the Attorney General's office and submitting the policy back to them should a decision be made to either reactivate the current system that we have or pursue a different fixed license plate reading technology or solution. And with that, that's the last slide, and glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Chief, for this overview of these technologies. This session tonight is intended to be informational, and I know we covered a lot of territory, so we can begin our questions. I just will say for the listening public, and we have a few guests here tonight. That's really wonderful. Thank you for being here. As was mentioned, we do have an ALPR program that is currently paused, and the city released an updated statement on that last week. That contract is valid through 2027 and is currently paused. The program is paused due to council action in November. All right, Chief, you have gone through all of your technology. I just want to check in one more time. You actually did have a pitch for us in the packet related to next steps you would like to see. Would you like to talk about those, or would you like to go ahead and move on to questions?
How will take a couple questions and I'll
Okay,
start with my picture.
all right. Well, we'll go around for the first round of questions. Council members, you are up. Who would like to kick us off? Councilmember Forsyth.
I will jump in and kick us off with a few questions. Going back to the first presentation, you had mentioned the body-worn cameras and the use for mitigating complaints. Is there, and that data is held for 90 days. If someone files a complaint outside of that 90-day period, what happens? And is there a statute of limitation, I guess, is the question.
So if the complaint came in after 90 days and that footage was not, did not correlate to a criminal case, then we would no longer have the body-worn camera footage available.
Okay, and what is the, just for my own knowledge, what is the time period for a complaint like that?
There is really no statute of limitations. It's, unlike some crimes, it's not a year. I mean, a person can come back and say 3 years ago, Officer X did Y. We would be legally obligated to investigate it, to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you. One more on this same topic, if that's okay. Oh, actually, this is on the drones. You'd mentioned the 25% reduction, or that only 25% of the calls actually have a need for an officer to arrive. Is that correct? Or is that 80%? There was an 80 and a 25.
Yeah, so right now, so year to date, we've been able to cancel the ground response 25% of the times.
25%
Yeah.
of the time. Can you elaborate on more and what is an instance where there's a cancellation of ground response?
So one recent call that came in was of a individual who appeared to be unresponsive and possibly overdosed at a bus stop. So ground units were started, paramedics were started. The drone got there, observed the individual. While they were waiting for those ground units to respond, a friend of that person came and said, "Hey man, wake up." He woke up. And they got on the bus and went on their way. So that was one of the circumstances where not only were we able to cancel the police response, we were also able to cancel the medic response because again, a passerby just saw a person slumped over. We responded, so that's I'll say probably one of the more recent examples. There's been other times where individual is yelling at the sky, et cetera. Somebody calls because they're concerned. The drone's able to get there, observe the individual. They're not committing a crime. They're not walking in traffic. They are just simply having some type of episode. In that particular case, the individual moved on. There was no reason for for an officer to go and make contact with that person. There can be other times where we'll get calls for juveniles doing what I'll call juvenile things, but not rising to to a criminal level. And we will observe them. And again, most of the time, individuals don't know that the drone is there. It's generally at about 200 to 250 feet, and the kids will go about their business. And again, not committing a crime, just was doing something that was concerning or disturbing to a passerby, or and a lot of times, as I said, it's kids, doing kid stuff, but not rising to a level of criminality.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Who would like to go next? Councilmember Kritzer.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll follow up on that I think it is an interesting use case with the drones in particular. Where we kind of see that as one of our tools to think about alternative crisis response. I'm curious if you can share, does the use of the drone as the first responder also allow for better tailoring on who responds? And have we paired that with our responders, like our mental health professional or other kind of resources to be able to identify what are the right resources to respond to a particular situation?
Yes, it can. Obviously, we've just gotten the MHP and the co-response program back up and running, but oftentimes, based on the call type that is put in or based on the information that is being received by dispatch, they will already self-deploy So if the call comes in and it's indicating a person that is having some type of, mental, emotional issue, that is oftentimes how it's broadcast, or that is the information contained in the call information. And based on that, the co-response unit will automatically either assign themselves to the call, or they will be assigned to the call. And so they will be going, but it could be a circumstance where the individual, like I said, moves on, and they may or may not make contact with that person. So I'll say I understand where you're going with it, but no, not a, I'll say a seamless or integrated if-then type of circumstance.
Thank you. And if I may, I just had, since we're on the drone topic, one of the questions that we've gotten quite a bit since starting to use the drone as a first responder is when the drones have been deployed during events or protests. And I'm curious if you can speak to that, especially since you mentioned that typically they're only used in response to a direct call for service, and how we think about that, as well as I think there is concern about that kind of aspect around surveillance and the kind of drone not specifically going for that specific call for service.
So we have used it for, I'll call it gatherings, and it not a specific type of gathering, but for crowd assessment. So so we had a event in Downtown Park, and I'll say separate the two, right? So we're not talking a protest, we're not talking a demonstration, we're just saying an event in Downtown Park that may have, a few hundred people, a few thousand people. It allows us to basically fly over, get a assessment of the crowd. We're not capturing pictures. We're not, zooming in on faces. It's not for that purpose. It's simply for the purpose of, I'll call it crowd size assessment. So that would be that circumstance. If it was specifically a demonstration, we would not typically fly on that unless there was some indication of, I'll say, a potential either counter-protest or agitation or something like that, to where we're trying to assess both crowd size and I'll call it temperament, and if we may need to, I'll say, mount a response for potential like crowd demonstration and or request additional resources. I'll say the other way, or the non-technical way of doing it, would be, send officers out there, try and assess crowd size, and then you run into a circumstance, if it were a situation where it was agitated crowd or a hostile crowd, now you have an officer or two in the midst of that without proper resources. So this here allows us to safely assess what it is we need to then perhaps deploy the right type of resources, or perhaps request additional resources from surrounding agencies if it were big enough or seeming to go in that direction. Fortunately, we haven't had that, but that would be how we would utilize it.
Okay, thank you. I would just say that I think on this topic that there's more potentially for us to look at in terms of adding specificity into our existing governance policies on this, since I think when we first began and we put these governance policies in, we didn't really cover that particular situation. I think being really prescriptive if we were to use it for those purposes, and having just a discussion about in which cases would we want that, because we have heard public feedback on that is important. In addition, I noted you shared about, I think we put it in when we did the contract for the drones around banning facial recognition and biometric processing, but it doesn't show up in the policies that we have around data governance on this. So I'm wondering if we want to also revisit that as well. So I'm just going to kind of put that out there for additional follow-up on these items to make sure that we have really clear line between the practice that I'm hearing from you and what it is that is our intent.
Council Vice President, and then Councilmember Parsi.
Thank you. And it is almost as though Councilmember Kritzer was reading right from the notes that I was taking from your presentation earlier, is that now that we've had this program in place for some time, now that we've had this program in place for some time, what are some things that we want to revisit? While, of course, we've we've seen a lot of benefits from this particular program and how beneficial it is for our community. And also appreciating that we've got an opportunity to build some trust. And how can we do that? And by revisiting some things to where it's reflected in our policy, while these aren't practices of what we're doing today, to make sure that when Chief Lowe is gone, and that there's some guardrails in there to protect the community in the future as well as for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Parsi.
Thank you. I will start this with saying that safety is the priority for all of us here. But I want to move to ALPR and ask you a question. So you mentioned for body-worn cameras, we have an element of consent and we have an element of informing people that they are being recorded. I've heard a similar argument with phones that, we're being tracked to our location using our phones. But if a resident is concerned about their privacy, they can turn off their location. They can choose not to carry a phone, or with body-worn cameras, they can choose they can choose to not consent to being recorded. With ALPRs, do we have a way for residents to opting out or not consenting to being tracked or recorded?
No, because there is no expectation of privacy in a public place, and ALPR is utilized in public, on public roadways. So there is no opt-out, no different than if an individual is walking or driving down the street and someone else took out a phone and wanted to record them. So there is no mechanism to opt out in public.
Did you have a follow-up, Councilmember Parsi?
So for follow-up for that, given that, we're talking about one officer being able to observe an individual, that observation is limited per number of officers, per availability of the officers, but when we translate that into cameras that are installed, potentially near people's commute or houses, does that, this is data retention, if I remember, is 21 days for the state legislature that you mentioned is just passed. So that's over a lengthy period that, if 20 days I do the same thing, likely 21st day I will do the same. It raises some concerns around predictability and doing something that otherwise an officer alone would not be able to do. So that can be a privacy concern for many.
Thank you, Councilmember Parsi. I'm going to keep going around for first round. Councilmember Prakriya?
Thank you. I have one question about the body-worn cameras and drones, and then two about ALPR. The first question is, I guess, if you could give a rough order of magnitude estimate of the operating costs of continued operation of both the body-worn cameras and the drones.
So roughly, drones are about $225,000 a year, give or take. Body-worn cameras, I believe, are about $43,000 a year. But for magnitude, that is every commissioned police officer. So I want to say we have 83 commissioned police officers, and then a few extras. So that's probably spread out over, say, 85 units versus the 8 units for the drones. So we currently have 8 drone docks. We have a couple other patrol deployed drones, but then as far as body-worn cameras, that is probably 85 units. Like I said, we have 83 officers and we have some spares.
Awesome, thank you. And then my questions about ALPR, kind of about both its failures and successes. So you noted that it has about a 98% plus license plate read rate. Has there ever been an instance where a failed read led to some kind of failure of the ALPR system or some kind of incorrect diagnosis in Redmond so far?
To my knowledge, the failure is been in the character recognition aspect of it, and/or some states the color schemes of some specialized or personalized plates have contributed to that. So that's generally where the failure comes in, is the character recognition component of it.
And has that ever led to an instance of mischaracterization of someone as maybe a potential bad actor?
Here in Redmond, no. Throughout the nation, I couldn't say definitively. If we are alluding to a case that we had here in Redmond that was broadcast on the news, it was not a failure of the system or a mischaracterization of the plate. It was the wanted individual was the son, who was a junior, of the father, who was the senior. And so that was not a failure of the system. The vehicle was properly identified as having an outstanding warrant. The operator of the vehicle was a male. It just happened to be senior, not junior. So I don't know if that's kind of what the question or.
No, I was not alluding to that, but I was just asking in general. My other question is about the Senate bill that just passed, 6002, that my colleague asked about, where all data generally, except in specific cases, must be deleted after 21 days. Right, with the 6 successes that we have seen with flock cameras in Redmond, had this bill been in place, how many of those would still have been successes?
They all would have been successes because, to my knowledge, none of those successes came after 21 days. They were fairly contemporaneous to either our investigation or the information being put into the system. So going back to the 21-day aspect, going back to what we call the surveillance part of the piece. Again, it's a piece of data that is only going to be accessed or utilized if that vehicle is associated with some type of investigation. Otherwise, it's basically just a piece of data that's out there. So the 21 days is, I'll say for our operational purposes, the 21 days is acceptable just because of our internal workflow. That would be sufficient time for us to do the initial screening on the case to potentially determine if there is a vehicle involved, if there was some investigative need or purpose to query the system for that data. Otherwise, there is no need for it, and we wouldn't do it. Right? Everything is associated, with the case. Every time if we were to go into the system to search for something, it has to correlate to a case number and have a specific reason for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni, did you have any questions for this first round? Not right now. Okay, I'm going to hop in with a couple of my own. I do apologize. I see other hands. Thanks for the conversation. This is a great conversation. Thanks so much. And Chief, one of the things in the memo that you sent us ahead of the conversation tonight, you laid out a few questions that are used to evaluate these pieces of technology and when we bring more technology online. Some of what we kind of skipped over in the story today is how some of these pieces of technology came to be. And for instance, the body-worn camera program came, very shortly following a large national event that was very scary, and the community demanded these body-worn cameras. And as a member of the audience who sat over there, I watched the council wrestle with how to come up with the money to launch that program and now sustain that program. And every 2 years now, we are maintaining a budget for that program. And I think we are maintaining it because the public has understood that now this is a piece of technology that increases my trust in the system and my trust in the teams that are serving us here in Redmond. So for there are 3 questions that you offered, Chief, like, does it solve a specific problem? Does it create a measurable efficiency? Stuff around effectiveness. For me, really simply, one of the things that's important to me in evaluating these technologies is, does it promote trust? Because it's really important that folks be able to trust the good work that's happening here at Redmond. So that is like the key theme over and over in my mind. I think the body-worn camera program is a success to date on that. And I have a lot of hope. I just want to express my hopefulness that that the drone program can one day be that too. So this has been an experiment with the program. Having a response of lights and sirens and vehicles speeding down the street and an armed response being canceled 25% of the time is very compelling to me. I'm very, very hopeful that that is something that can continue. I do appreciate that the conversation has been brought up. The council received a lot of community input prior to tonight's conversation. One of the concerns has been around large-scale events, and we know we are headed into a season of large-scale events. So I appreciate the conversation around what might need to be done from a policy perspective, just for a backstop of what it already sounds like the practice is. My hope would be, if we're gonna have these drones helping keep us safe as participants in these events and your team safe, that when we will know we have succeeded when someone in Redmond sees a drone over the sky of a large event and they say, haha, that thing is keeping me safe today. I am so glad that that's here. I trust that that is part of the toolkit that is keeping me safe. So I really appreciate the conversation that was brought up here. And if we can also work collectively to see the story of that. I don't know if, I do have a records question, I guess, is what I'm also getting to, is say these large scale events where drones have been flying in order to help keep teams safe and the crowds safe. Are those public records that can be requested through could you walk us through some of the records questions?
Yeah, so everything, well, just about everything we do is a public record. So yes, those would all be public records. If someone were to request drone footage from a specific event that we had flown over, it would go through the same redaction process that body-worn camera video or in-car camera video goes through. It would be reviewed by one of the record specialists. Faces would be digitized and blurred out. So a person may get the footage that shows it, but they would not get any identifying information. And I had stated, publicly in some of our other conversations related to the license plate readers, prior to the bill passing, those were all public records. My position was that if we got requests for them, we would redact the license plate information, because for me, that is publicly identifying information. If you do not have a nexus to that information, and we saw that, or a number of cities saw that, just random requests for all of this information, I was not willing to give the license plate. I will give the red Honda back panel, but I'm not giving the license plate, because for me, that was publicly identifying information, because you could then take that information, go to DOL and find out who the driver of the car was. Now, there could have been some debate as to whether or not that was appropriate, but that was the position, that I took on that. Fortunately, we didn't have to, see if I was right or wrong. We never got those requests. We didn't have to go there with the bill passing. It is retroactive, so none of that information, and let me clarify, we don't have any information any longer because the program was paused, so all of that data has long since been gone. But had that come in, none of that information is subject to public records. It's retroactive on the bill that passed. So that issue has been resolved, from the state legislature.
Okay, thank you. We'll go around for round 2. Councilmember Forsyth had her hand up, and then Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. Just to clarify on that last point, so you're saying the new state bill 6002 concurs with what your personal stance with how we were going to protect our data would have been. Did I hear you correctly?
That's a liberal interpretation. My stance on it was prior to the bill passing, I did not believe that giving the license plate information to a person not germanely involved in that request was appropriate. So I had instructed my staff that we would digitize that portion. Now, we would still comply with the request, but we would not be providing license plate information. Fortunately, like I said, we don't have to test that premise or theory because it's not subject to public record requests.
Got it. Thank you. So I just want to go back to say that I agree with Councilmember Kritzer's thought that we need to circle back on the large-scale events and go back to our data governance policy and include that, because that was one area that was not included in that initial data governance before these programs were launched. So in agreement there. So I hope my colleagues are with me. Going back to what Councilmember Parsi was saying about opting out of the fixed ALPRs, what would it look like for us to implement a system where we could actually have community members opt out? And I realize that would be a big lift if these cameras were to come back on. How could we go about community self-opting out?
You know, off the top of my head, it would be a significant administrative burden. I would definitely want to confer with the city attorney because I'm sure there's an exposure there if a person were to opt out and we failed to do it, and then how we would operationalize that. So just if you want to call it, spitballing, would be a circumstance where we would have to create a process whereby a person could say, here's my license plate, I want to opt out. We would then have to create a process or a mechanism, and then this kind of goes against the premise, because we would then have to go in and search the system, or we'd have to create a process where the system would be queried on, let's just say, every 24 hours for that particular license plate. And then figure out the mechanism to delete or remove it from the system. It just talking through it, very labor intensive, and from a city perspective and from a budgeting perspective, if that were the guidance and direction that would come with the FTE request, because as it stands right now, just the normal amount of records requests and redaction that we get, we are at capacity. So to add another administrative, I won't call it a burden, but add another administrative process like that would be incredibly labor intensive.
Okay, I'm definitely interested in the concept of it, though, thinking that maybe an AI tool could help alleviate that administrative. So definitely interested in, I'm not a fan of these in the first place, but definitely interested in giving community a way, if these were to come back, to opt out of that system. If I may continue, two more.
Can I just, and the other thing that I would caution, we have to be mindful that while we may, I'll say, come up with a way or a solution, and if that was something that was acceptable and we figured out the workflow behind it, that we don't operate in a vacuum. And I think we run the risk of creating a false, I'll call it a false narrative around that, and or potentially creating an unsustainable precedent because it'll be, well, Redmond did it, why can't fill in the blank city do it? And not every city may have the willingness, the resources, financial or otherwise, to do it. So I would just be, I'll say, cautious or careful about, embarking on something like that.
Got multiple hands. Mayor Bernie, yes?
Thanks. No idea if that's a possibility. I think part of the cautionary thing would also be that there could be community members who are, because they don't want to be tracked through their license plates, out of, real serious concern around that. You could also have bad actors request the same thing for nefarious reasons. And so that's also the challenge with kind of thinking about this,
Sure.
having never thought
Worth
about it before.
studying, though.
Yes.
I think the next hand was Councilmember Kritzer. Oh, were you done, Councilmember
I
Forsyth?
did have two more that could be potentially quick.
Oh, sure, yeah, go ahead. My apologies.
That's okay, thank you. Interested if you could talk about why, you mentioned that there are ALPR technology within the vehicles, within the patrol cars. Interested to share, I understand you're like, that's a point of contact if the vehicle is out there, but why did we choose the fixed versus that when that technology was already there? Was it a cost expense? And with the parking enforcement, it seems like a lower level of surveillance if those two technologies were to be able to be utilized versus the fixed technologies. Do the parking enforcement cameras have the ability to feed into that same missing persons database and all of that?
Yes, it has the ability to do so, but typically the parking enforcement license plate readers, short answer is yes. It's kind of partitioned off, so it's not across the entire spectrum of databases, so it's not like the national database, but it can hit on missing persons, amber alerts, silver alerts, et cetera, and stolen vehicles, but typically it does not bring back hits on wanted vehicles because most parking enforcement personnel are not commissioned police officers. They're either third-party contractors or civilian staff. So from a safety perspective, they're not in a position to deal with or do anything if a car comes back with a felony warrant or that type of thing on it. As far as why on the in-car cameras, both a return on investment, literally of the financial investment and the, I'll call it investigative investment. So the in-car camera license plate reading aspect is substantially more expensive. I want to say probably a 10x cost for that. And like I said, it's a point in time. If that car happens to be there, we only have 5 to 6 cars out at any given point in time, but I would have to pay for the entire 39-car fleet. So it's not just a single car or just when that car is on versus $3,000 for a fixed solution, and that solution was grant funded. So those were the decision points or the contributing factors to the fixed versus mobile.
Okay, so the parking one, we're going to have our own in-house parking enforcement.
Yes.
Anyway, so the
Yes.
argument of it's a third party would go away at that point.
Third party, so yes, we will have license plate reading technology as part of our parking enforcement, but as far as what information it will receive, so its primary focus will be for the zone that it's in and what it's enforcing. If that vehicle is associated with a missing person, then that information will come back. And I'll say it can be up for debate whether or not we allow it to hit on stolen vehicles. Okay. I'm not opposed to that, but that will be a discussion when we come back to talk specifically about the parameters around the parking enforcement program.
Okay, from my opinion, last comment, that use of that technology seems more like we're hitting what we were initially trying to solve for with missing persons, stolen vehicles, than the fixed cameras. I've never been a fan of the fixed cameras. That's no surprise to you. But the point in time capture of, say, a parking enforcement or the police vehicles, to me feels less Big Brother-y and more community safety focused.
Okay, thank you so much. And Councilmember Kritzer.
Yeah, thank you for this conversation. I appreciated Council President Stewart bringing up within this conversation the idea around community trust and the use of these technologies to ensure that everyone can feel safe within our community. And this has been actually a conversation we have been having the entire time I've been on council about reimagining public safety and really making sure that we have a public safety system that ensures that everyone can feel safe in a variety of different senses. And as referenced, part of the reason we did enforce body-worn cameras or bring that in was because of public request, and specifically for accountability as well for public, and we have been able to kind of share that out as well. But I think going back to the trust aspect, and when we think about the automatic license plate reader technology, and specifically the flock cameras, the fixed ALPRs, I think right now, compared to when we were making this decision, some of the context for our community around trust has changed. And it may not be trust necessarily with our government, but I'm just going to call it out that there's a lot of lack of trust with the federal government. A federal government that has come into our community, not even contacted our police, and been detaining our residents. Not using this data, to be clear, from the flock cameras, but that has broken the trust with our community. And we have seen instances of the use of these technologies in other jurisdictions to aid in some of those activities. And I think our community has a lot of concerns about this. We've been hearing that. And I think for that, I think there is more for us to look at beyond even what was addressed in the state policies. Although I do really want to appreciate and specifically give a shout out to Representative Osman Salahuddin, our former council member, who was a part of the conversations here at our table here in council, and then brought that bill to the state legislature to make sure that there would be some baseline protections for communities if they're looking at these technologies. I think there are still more things for us to be able to look at and more feedback for us to get from our community as we discuss about this. So I just want to be clear that I'm currently not supportive of, or I am supportive of maintaining our pause on the flock cameras because I think there are more things for us to be able to look at on that technology and to be honest, more trust to build with community around the use of that technology as well. One of the things that I think, if we are going to be moving forward still with use of ALPR in other spaces, such as the parking enforcement, as well as the school cameras, and I think before those school cameras would be implemented, I would want to see us have a deep discussion around data retention, which I think is at the heart of some of this, as well as the data that gets captured. We do have that within our policies, but I think we need a lot more detail since there are different aspects of data retention, even you're describing tonight, of how you might use it when you're doing parking enforcement versus a speed camera versus a fixed ALPR technology, and being able to both have that be clear and transparent to us and to our community, and so that we can get feedback on that as we move forward is really important. So those are a couple of the steps that I think I'd want to look at as we assess kind of the use of these technologies more broadly.
If I could, so as far as the data around parking enforcement, that is all enumerated by law. So those retention periods and parameters are already specified. So for parking enforcement, the data is captured until that matter is resolved, i.e. until the fine is paid or until the dispute is resolved through the court. So no different than any other type of evidence. So a person has a right to contest or challenge the citation. That process is handled through the court. So if that what's the right word? If they contested, then until that matter is adjudicated by the court, the data would be retained. But once that matter is resolved by the court, then at the point the data is deleted, and I'll say irrespective of time, because obviously it goes by the court calendar. So if for some reason the court is backlogged, and let's say it takes, for example, 75 days for that matter to go to court and be adjudicated, then that data would be retained for that time period. Conversely, if the person got the ticket, says, yeah, I was speeding, and they paid the fine within the 14 or 15 days, and at that point, once the fine is resolved, the data goes away, and that's already specified in law.
And just to put a very fine point on it, I heard also the concern around this potential data retention around the speed cameras. So in that particular case, if the camera takes the image due to a violation, could you enumerate, if you know,
Yes.
the record policy?
Yes, so same rules apply for speed enforcement cameras, because since that is a violation, a person has a right to contest or appeal. So until that matter is resolved, then the data would be retained. And then for speed enforcement in particular, those violations are actually reviewed for validity by an officer. So even though it's an automatic process, those images would come in, an officer would review it to validate the fact that it was a violation. So it's not just the automatic, the ticket's going to go out. Commissioned police officer says, yes, that is a valid violation. At that point, the violator is notified. If for some reason the officer determines that it was not a valid ticket, then that matter gets dismissed, and then that data goes away.
Thank you. Can I do one follow-up question? So one thing that we have received questions around on this too, though, is if someone's data is captured though by a speed camera and they have not sped, is that data retained at all?
So they have a right to appeal. So if they felt that they didn't in fact speed, then there's a appeals process through the court. So yes, they could challenge it. The cameras are, I'll say, tuned similar to in traffic officers' LiDAR system. We will have a conversation about where the trigger point is. Generally 6 miles over posted is what the National Transportation Safety Board suggests. So we will have a conversation about where, for our community safety, where that trigger point is.
Yeah, sorry, I meant if someone is under and just is captured by driving past the camera, that their log, that's not saved. And also, can you just follow up on, assuming that the answer is yes, when the data from any of these systems is deleted, can you speak to kind of the level of deletion? Is it fully deleted? What is that process for deletion? Because I think that is also of concern, especially with the concerns that we've heard from community about access of other governmental entities or requests for that data.
I'll have to get back to, I don't know the level of deletion. I'll get a technical answer. But as far as if they are under the speed, so it's triggered much like when a traffic officer does it. So it's triggered by 6 miles over. So if you're driving 4 miles over, it's not going to take a picture because you're not at the threshold. So at 6 miles over posted. So if it's a 15 at 21 and above, a picture will be captured because that is a violation. If you're 19, 20, 17, it's not going to capture a picture.
Okay, thank you for that dialogue. Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Chief, we're dealing with a lot of feelings of trust. There's that profound quote by Maya Angelou that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And the sentiment right now is largely around trust, and it's around relationships. So even if we can pinpoint to, yes, and this is what we're doing, or this is what we're about to do. I'm not, from what we've been hearing from the community, is that there's repair that needs to be done there. There's a lack of trust. And how do we get to the point to where we are repairing, we are building that trust? There was several people that talked to me about that they were concerned about the appearance that the drone program has expanded because we went from the initial 3 docking stations to now 7. So they felt that that was an expansion of the program. And then when originally the fixed ALPRs was going to be one thing, and then it got increased even by just a handful of additional cameras that were privately purchased. So then they felt that it was, again, an expansion and not having transparency. So again, it's the, what are we as a city leaving our community in feeling? So of course it's not empirical data. You know, it's how do we navigate this? And you said it so beautifully, like your position is the most political and apolitical, right? Like it's both. So it's something that we definitely have to contend with. It is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. It's kind of what's for dinner. And we've worked really hard to be aspiring to, and I say aspiring because I don't think that we're quite there yet, because of the current dynamic. We're working really hard to become a welcoming city where we can say like, hey, you can come here. But specifically the fixed ALPRs is giving the feeling of you're welcome here, but we're going to be watching you because of that. Now, the trust on this, I think, goes both ways as well, because while your department is taking action to build that trust, and if folks are watching, like they can see, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that. But then if it puts, my concern with the fixed ALPRs is because at any point, the federal government can come in with an overreach. And then even if you're doing all of this great work, and then as soon as they come in with a judicial warrant, and they say, we want that data, we then have to give them that data. And then we've got a large group that says, see, I told you. So then all the work that we had done is now jeopardized. So it's quite the pickle to say, okay, well, how are we going to be navigating this? And we're still dealing with issues that we had back in 2020 when we had the body-worn cameras and built, as Council President had brought, like, we're hopeful that, yes, we are building that, and we've got these things put in place. And I'm not sure exactly what those next steps are as far as how do we continue to rebuild that, but knowing that that is definitely a necessary step that we need to take into consideration, we need to move on. What level of transparency can we have? What further policies, how can we now revisit our data privacy policies or our retention policies, knowing what deleted really means, or is it like our email and just archived, where we can still pull that up whenever we want, seeing where that is. And when we say that we own our data, that we truly do own our data. And there was another thing that I was wondering about, because you had mentioned where it does have, and I'm extrapolating a little bit, where our systems, even though they're not currently linked, they can't currently share data, is there a potential to where they can be linked and be sharing data? Because you said that the in-car and parking ALPRs cannot tap into the national database, but we can. So then could the three potentially be linked together?
Yeah, so for the license plate reading technology, it's really a back-end aspect, but part of this, as I said, oftentimes parking enforcement is conducted by non-commissioned staff, so there are limitations as to what they can access. So it may not be possible to, give the parking enforcement vehicle full access to like the National Criminal Database, because these are not commissioned police officers. But as far as missing persons and those types of things, yes. So I guess from a technical perspective, yes, it would be possible to link the automatic license plate reading systems up across the spectrum, but there are access limitations based upon what personnel is accessing that particular data.
Okay, so the capacity is there. So we would need to rely on, some policy. We need to rely on policy to prevent that from happening.
Policy, but not, so not city policy. So the council doesn't have the authority to say who can access the National Criminal Database. That already exists.
Yeah.
Right, so it is policy driven, but that policy is already in place as far as who has access to which criminal data databases or data systems.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Parsi?
Thank you. I have two questions for you. One, this first one, I have emailed it to you before and asked you a couple of times, so I just wanted to kind of ask this here for the record. Currently, our ALPR flock camera is paused and suspended, suspended. As far as I understand, we have turned it off virtually, but not physically. Is that correct? And if so, can the operating company turn it back on?
They cannot. Based on your question, I did reach out to the vendor flock. They did confirm with their engineers that there is no signal going to or from the cameras, so the cameras are not capturing any imagery. They are not communicating with any system or database. They are still physically attached to the poles and connected, but they are not gathering any information. And just to clarify, you say for the record, the reason why I had to reach out to them is because we no longer have access to the system. So in November, we terminated everyone's access to the system from, as I said at the beginning, we access these systems through our city sign-on, so that has all been terminated through our TIS department, so no one has access to those systems, and I have confirmation in writing from the company that there is no information being transmitted either way.
I appreciate you sharing that. So a second part of my question is, in the privacy document that you shared, Part 6, a release for sharing the data, it states that the data will only be shared with other law enforcement or prosecutorial agencies and a few others. Currently, I haven't seen a mention of data being shared with the companies, the vendor companies. I would like to better understand if the vendor is capturing the data, collecting it, storing it, what type of data and what encryption levels, what security level do they have visibility to? Do they have a visibility into unencrypted license plates? Do they not have that? If we're sharing any data with them, I would expect to see some level of data sharing with the vendors as well, but I'm not currently seeing that. So can you tell us more?
Yeah, so I would refer you back to the MSA that was shared with you several weeks back before the last executive session. As far as the databases, the encryption, all of that. So any vendor that we do business with, I'll say 99% of it is cloud-based. It's either in the Amazon Gov Cloud or in the Microsoft Azure Gov Cloud. And then everything has to be CJIS, which is the Criminal Justice Information System compliant, as well as Access, which is the Washington State compliance. So all of it has, and I'll probably get this wrong, I want to say it's SOC 2 level encryption. So because it's in the Gov Cloud and it's CJIS compliant, it is all encrypted. No one gets to see encrypted information in transit. And then generally speaking, to my knowledge, vendors do not have access to our data. I know there's been questions around in some of the contracts that we'll talk about. Vendors have access to the data for training purposes or for the purpose of the machine learning or training, et cetera. That is generally not something that our TIS department will sign off on. So they do they look at the master service agreements and they do a technical review for all programs and systems before we move forward with contracts. So to my knowledge, all of those concerns are covered before we actually execute the contract. And then again, because of the requirements for CJIS and Access, we have the encryption and those other safeguards in place.
Councilmember Prakriya?
Two questions. Number one, just going off the tail end of your answer right there. If does the vendor do any kind of training of its models, or did it do any kind of training of its models prior to the cameras being taken officially online? If these are, ML-based models, are they tailored specifically? Are the models tailored specifically to Redmond, or are they the same models that are deployed nationwide?
So very high level to my understanding of it is before the product ever gets to market, the training and validation and supervision, et cetera, scoring, all of the technical aspects of the model are done before a product ever comes to market. So once it comes to market, to my knowledge and to my knowledge of our tech review process, we don't allow our data to be used for that purpose. But typically in public safety tech, that doesn't occur once it comes to the production side. Just having, how do I put it? Just understanding the space and having talked with companies, the training parts and pieces are typically done, and those agreements happen well before a product, comes to market. Unlike some of the other ML models and different things, especially in the public safety space. And then again, with our safeguards in place, to my knowledge, that does not occur. We don't allow our data to be used for that purpose.
Thank you. And then one quick follow-up is, just from my understanding, if we were to go look into these buckets and actually look at what the line by line, and I assume maybe there's some CSV file, maybe it's encoded in a different way. What is the actual data? What are the parameters of this data? We have the license plates, but what else would there be? The license plates, the time.
Right, so it's a time and date stamp. You have the license plate. It will have, I guess what they call like vehicle characteristics. So when it captures that image, and I don't know if you're asking kind of like the technical programming question, how it reads that data. That's well above I'll say my technical skill set. But as far as the information from the user interface, what we get when we query it, we can query it based on license plate, partial plate, red Honda, red pickup truck, et cetera. And then within that defined search parameter, it will then bring us back what it believes matches that criteria. And then, like I said, from the training model piece aspect of it, that occurs well before the product is at market. So that's already done on the back end. So it already knows what a red Honda Accord is, a red pickup truck, et cetera. So that it's not using what it potentially captures in that moment to train it and understand it. That was already done and validated before it came to market.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief.
That's interesting.
Councilmember Soni, just checking in. Question? Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much, Chief. I think it's a long session for you. You've been asking so many questions. And again, resonating with my colleagues here in terms of the flock cameras. When the decision was taken to bring them, I'm not sure if that it was done in a kind of a piloted way, whether we started with the smaller areas or these things. But knowing the world where we are living, and reading through the messages that people have been sending and raising their concerns, and that's what we have been talking about, it is not only creating a fear and lack of trust, but also creating challenge with the mental health. So people are so worried and stressed, and it's definitely becoming one of another problem. And I'm just feeling if we are trying to fix one problem, are we creating another problems associated with this? And we don't want to be into a situation where our communities, because we have to listen to the voice of the community. So I definitely feel like, with all, no matter what the data has, is coming through, until unless we have some more clarity on the usage of that data and how our, our legislatures are working on some of these things. I'm definitely in agreement that we have to, keep it suspended and work in building our trust again with our communities. So that would be a kind of a biggest priority for us, because if they don't trust, then no matter how much we are trying to do for them, it may not be of a big use for them.
Madam President, if I could. So just to kind of bring it full circle, and I know that this topic, and there may be community members that are newer to this discussion that may not have been, I'll say, paying attention when we first started having this conversation. So my point and purpose for bringing this technology on board, as was stated, right? Does it create an efficiency? Does it solve a problem? It clearly solves a problem, and it has an investigative nexus for us. When we started this conversation, not just here in Redmond, but around the region, we were having a number of smash and grabs at pot dispensaries and that type of thing, right? Here locally, I want to say we had 8 over a time period. When we brought this on, I said in this exact same spot, we had this exact same conversation, and I said very clearly, this is not about peekaboo, it's about transparency. We had the conversation, and I know there's been a couple emails from community members. We posted signs saying that we use public safety technology. The purpose of this is to help us catch individuals who come to this community and commit crime, because when we look at our arrest data, over 90% of the people who commit crime here in Redmond do not live here in Redmond. So I understand the community's concern, but and as I say, I don't have time, and my staff does not have time to look for the Redmond resident that goes to Trader Joe's every Thursday at 3 o'clock, because if to the life pattern, if Thursday at 3 o'clock is when they go grocery shopping, that's typically when they're going to go. But at the same time, if we have a crime that occurs in that shopping complex, I need to see, or if I can see the car that is not the one that is always there Thursday at 3 o'clock, that is an investigative lead for us. That helps us substantially as we look to bring people to justice who commit crimes here in Redmond. I understand the concerns, but at the end of the day, that is our sole and only purpose of for having this technology. Is to keep the community safe, and it is a very valuable tool for that. And while fortunately here in Redmond we don't have a ton of violent crime, but time and time again, just recently, as I want to say a week and a half ago, there was a horrific triple murder in Utah. It was flock cameras, automatic license plate reading that allowed them to track the suspect through Arizona and ultimately capture that person in Colorado. The Brown shooting, where the individual went to the college campus and killed people. It was a license plate reader that got the suspect. Here locally, the Travis Decker case, unfortunately, the father who killed his 3 daughters. It was a license plate reading camera that allowed them to find it. So it has value, and yes, I understand there have been circumstances in other places, as has been acknowledged, of I'll say misuse or use in ways that we don't use it here. And I always go back to, I ask that we be judged by what we do here in Redmond, not what occurs in other parts of the country, because we don't operate that way. And I appreciate the sentiment or accolades, well, what happens when you leave? Well, we've established a culture of how we do police work here. And that culture will, live beyond me. Right? And it goes deep into the organization. It goes down to the actual women and men doing the work on the street, that they understand how we conduct business here. And that's why I've been so, passionate about it, because it is a very valuable tool. If I go back to the other side, the other way to go about it is I need more police officers, right? A $3,000 camera and a feeling of something versus what it costs to, give me the 13 plus police officers I need to get us to the right staffing levels. That's the real conversation, and that's a conversation that we're going to have as we come up to the budget, part or piece of it. So as you deliberate it for the community, as you think about it, I will just go back again. The majority of the people who we arrest do not live here in Redmond. People come here from other areas to commit crime, and my job is to catch those people who commit crime here in Redmond, and this is a tool that helps us do that.
Thank you, Chief. And I appreciate everyone's conversation here tonight. We are nearing the end of the conversation. I do see another hand. I'm going to make a couple comments for myself on round 2, and then if there are last burning, questions, we'll make the time for them. But we we are probably nearing the end of also what is a productive educational opportunity. So, and that is what was set out to do today. So a couple comments, and then I'll go to Council Vice President Nueva Camina, because she had her hand up. I want to acknowledge for the community, you've heard a little bit about tonight about the data governance and the data governance policy that is particular to the department here. That exists in large part because prior to accepting the grant dollars to bring many of these technologies, it was a council request. And the other thing that we did in this current budget cycle is fund a data governance program. We had a very brief touch on it earlier tonight in committee, and folks can go and check that out. One of the things that we learned about how that work has been proceeding is that basically the investigation of how data governance works across the entire enterprise at the city has now been established. We know what the status quo is, and we have principles and policies in development, and representatives from every single department are involved in that process. So many more updates needed to come, and the council has a vested interest in making sure that that work is able to take place for the whole city, not just any one department. For my colleagues, especially the folks who are new, I want to encourage you, take your ride-alongs with Chief Lowe's team, take your fly-alongs. I made that up. That's what I mean by go visit the drone program, if you haven't already done that, and take additional briefings with the chief and his team regarding the questions that tonight sparked, because we want you to have your questions answered ahead of the budget process. So I know a couple questions came up tonight about the body-worn camera program. That one we've talked about that a lot in the past. Happy to catch you up. And for my part on the ALPR technology, I want to acknowledge the overwhelming community feedback that we have heard. It's important to me that we can be trusted to take a pause and reevaluate a decision when we need to. And I believe that is what we are doing here. There is a recommendation from the chief on page 5 and 5 of the packet here tonight in the memo. I don't hear a lot of immediate support for that action, but we do need to identify a next step. One thing that we were not set up to do today, nor did we set out to do today, is to understand what the new state law is. It's very fresh and might not even be 24 hours old and doesn't have the governor's signature on it yet. So one possible next step could be to have that come back, but we'll certainly need to work on it. And just again, I want to thank all the members of the community who hopefully many heard their questions answered here today, but it is an ongoing conversation. So with that, Councilmember Nueva Camina, and then anyone else who has a last minute thought or question. Okay, thanks. And then we'll go to Mayor Bruni.
Chief, I wanted to circle back on comment that you made around those that are arrested. The majority are not Redmond community members, are not Redmond residents. And I was listening for the answer in some of it, but I know that we didn't touch on it. And I was hoping that we would in the technology, so that I would have a better understanding of where we get our demographic data from. You know, I tend to be talking in numbers and taking a look at that. And knowing that our numbers, for a number of reasons, historically are skewed. And I fully appreciate that. One of the things that when I was taking a look at the 2025 demographic data was that there's a disparaging difference between when we get into ethnicity known from arrested and contact in field. Ethnicity unknown is 80%, but when it's a traffic stop, it's only 8%. So I was hoping that as we were traversing through all of our technology, that I would be able to say like, oh, and because we're collecting this data in this area, or because we're collecting this data in that area, to kind of see that. But I didn't see where we would come up with such a delta.
So it's two parts. So individuals can self-identify, or the officer can, I'll say, assume you know, what it is, and that is a challenge, you know, because I'll call it the functional reality is if the officer misidentifies someone, then that could become problematic for the officer. And so oftentimes they'll ask, how do you identify? And if a person they have the right to decline, to not identify, and then it's at that point up to the officer whether or not to assume and, you know, I'll say check a box or go, you know, unknown. So there's not a specific reason why it's this or that. So the easiest part is how do you identify? They give you an answer. It corresponds to one of, you know, the races or ethnicity. It's there. If they decline, then at that point, and I can't say it's obvious because it's not, right? And so, you know, part of, I'll call it the rebound or repercussion of all that we've gone through the last 4 years. Our officers are reluctant or hesitant to make an assumption for, you know, very candidly fear of being labeled with a bias or this or that, so it goes unknown, and that is recognized in the public safety field when it comes to, you know, I'll say getting you know, good data around that. So when I talked about the individuals not being from here, we go based on zip code, not based on that. So
Totally get that. And being somebody that, you know, presents ambiguously, I completely understand that. My question specifically was, there is a significant delta between 80% and 8%. How do we explain that to the community? And this is going back to the building trust piece, right? Because, I mean, it's not a difference between 25% and 35%, or even, you know, continuously 80% across the board. But it's going from 80% in both arrested and contact in field down to only 8% in a traffic stop. So that's why I was thinking that maybe there's something in our technology that is picking up on a traffic stop that the other two aren't. You know, maybe something that in this technology, but I didn't see that. But because there's such a huge difference between the two.
I'll say off the top of my head, I'm going to say the arrest numbers are probably much more significant than the traffic stop numbers. But I will look into it. I'll have my crime analyst look into it, and I'll come back to you. I'll say at our next Public Safety Committee meeting, I will address that question specifically.
Great, thank you. And on a lot of the crimes that are committed in the city, a lot of them are not from our residents. However, those that are from our residents, I spoke to this the last time that we were at the table. 50% of our assaults are domestic violence. And I had asked, like, what can we be doing to move the needle and decrease that? And we also know that 50%, we know that that's higher because so many go unreported. We know this. So in building the trust within the community, and I mean, I'm going to keep coming back to how do we rebuild the trust on both sides. How do we do that then if we're focusing on, instead of the things that are here happening within Redmond, if we're continuing to look at external, and what would it take, or what can we do to shift that to here internal in Redmond, because we're taking care of our community, like from within, and then kind of rippling out. How do we shift that?
So I'm glad you asked, ma'am. Give 3 minutes. So we just had a conversation today with a community-based organization that is focused on domestic violence co-response. They are doing, I heard you, Mayor, 1 minute. They are doing some phenomenal work down in South King County. So we just met with them today. They will have a proposal to me by the beginning of next week. We will evaluate that, and I do anticipate coming to council with a specific request. I got to get my plug in for House Bill 2015. We can utilize that portion of sales tax funding for alternative response specific to this domestic violence program, so that we actually have a solution for that. So to your point, it's not just about externally focused, it's about keeping the community safe, and even to keep us safe from within. And so I have now found a solution. Going back to my points, I've found something that actually addresses a problem, and so I will be bringing that forward for consideration, ultimately approval and funding for this domestic violence co-response program. Culturally competent, all certified, speak 21 different languages. across the spectrum. So very excited about that.
That is very good news, and I'm looking forward to looking for the difference between the 80% and 8%. Thank you.
We have Mayor Bernie, and then Councilmember Forsyth, and then Councilmember Kritzer.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for this discussion. I just wanted to mention that I really appreciate Representative Salahuddin and his work on, and I cannot recall the number of the bill.
6002.
So Senate Bill 6002 that has not been signed yet, but I talked with him the other day, and he's feeling great about it. But I also want to mention, not only did Representative Salahuddin work on it, but Chief Lowe also was deeply involved in it from the city perspective, trying to find a very positive path with that bill, knowing full well that there needs to be state oversight over that technology, and it was really important to get something done well. So I just want to thank him as well and also our city attorney was also involved in that. So I just want to share that as well, that we work really hard to make sure that not just Redmond has good policies in place, but that the state does as well. And I really very much appreciate the lead in technology that we have here in keeping our community safe.
Thank you, and we look forward to learning more about the bill and where it's helpful and where it may not be. Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. And I know many of us were also involved in those conversations early on as well, myself included. So it was definitely a team effort. I just want to circle back on the building trust. And Chief, I know that you've done a lot of work to build trust within our community. I think this council has done a lot of work to build trust within our community, especially around the data governance piece of this before we even allowed some of these programs to go online. I don't think that building trust issue is rooted in Redmond. I think that is rooted within what we're seeing with the federal overreach, as many of us have stated. I would appreciate if we could ask our fixed ALPR vendor if there were to be some sort of overreach statement that were put out by the federal government, if they commanding that they turn on our cameras, if that would be a material breach of our contract, and if that would, if they would, one, turn them on without our consent, and two, if that would cause a material breach, which would allow us to be removed from that program.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. I just wanted to flag, first of all, thank you, Chief Lowe. I really appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate on the last item that you shared, you hearing the council's concern around the issues around domestic violence and being so solution-oriented and figuring out how do we address this, and in all this work, being solution-oriented on figuring out how to keep our community safer. So thank you. I do think we should, just as a follow-up on this conversation, I would love to see us revisit our police technology governance policies. I brought up a couple different items. Happy to send a follow-up email to council leadership with some of the notes that I took on those. I think in terms of the governance, data retention, and storage was a couple different pieces, as well as the use of some of these technologies and making sure that we're really getting those that specificity in there. I know we are doing the bigger data governance project, but since we already have these policies in place, I think we can work on that sooner and just also revisit with some of our new colleagues who may have some additional thoughts on what we should have in there. So I guess that would be my request if others are interested, that we look at some future study session time on that. And then I would also just want to flag again and underscore that I think we should have a deeper dive discussion again about kind of all things related to the school speed cameras before they actually go into place, given the amount of feedback we're getting from community on the other types of fixed ALPR.
Thank you, and I definitely heard the interest, and will also work with the chair of the Committee of the Whole. We have a busy spring of study sessions coming our way as we get into some other fun stuff. So we'll also look to be strategic with committee time related to this issue. Any closing questions or thoughts? I know we went a little over, but I appreciate being able to close the conversation. Okay, thank you so much, Chief. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the members of the public who stayed with us for this conversation. The last item on our agenda tonight is council talk time. And if you are sticking around and you haven't seen council talk time before, this is our one time every 2 weeks where we can just kind of talk about a hodgepodge of issues. Because we are bound by the Open Public Meeting Act, we don't have water cooler conversations, so they kind of happen right here. Okay, I know that council leadership has a short list of, is there a question? Are we good? Oh, as was discussed, the second item has been removed following council direction last week. So we are on to council talk time. And council leadership has a little bit of a list to go through, but I know there are other things in the room. So let's go see what the issues are around the table, and whatever is left on the list, I'll run through at the end. I saw a hand over here. Councilmember Parsi?
I was going to ask if we could take a 5-minute recess, but if that's not okay.
Well, usually this section of the agenda takes less than 10 minutes. So are folks good for going 10 minutes on council talk time? Okay, we'll stick with that. Does anyone have any items for council talk time? Councilmember Forsyth.
I will jump in and give a brief update on our welcoming resolution in support of the Constitution and our community. We were hoping to give you the amended version tonight, but we were waiting to hear back from the police chief and our city attorney, and we heard back this afternoon with a few more items that Council President Stewart and I will be following up hopefully tomorrow so that we can get this in the packet for next week. There were a few questions that popped up that it's unclear to me whether they are procedural or actually need to be amended within the language. So stay tuned, hoping to get that wrapped and into the packet by 5 p.m. tomorrow so that we can review it and hopefully vote on it and get it in place very soon. And let me know if I missed anything, Council President Stewart.
I think that covers it for now. Other items? Councilmember Prakria?
Just wanted to give the rest of my colleagues a heads up, and I will email the mayor and city clerk as well that next week, due to a scheduling conflict, unfortunately, I will have to take a committee of the whole remotely, and as it is my committee that I chair, Council Vice President Nueva Camina has kindly agreed to substitute in chairing that meeting. And I will also, unfortunately, be remote for both committee and council on the 24th.
Thank you for letting us know, and for the Vice President for stepping in. We appreciate that. Seeing no other hands, Mayor Bernie, you want to tell us a little bit about State of the City, and then I'll run through my quick items?
Sure. It's tomorrow at 3. I think some of you are coming. I'd love all of you to. I know 3 o'clock can be a challenging time if you're working during the day. But should be a packed house, should be lots of fun. It's going to be a surprise, but it's very good and fun this year. And I mean, our city's in great shape. So, but would love to see you there. And then it'll be recorded for those that can't attend in person. So, because we can't fit everybody in chambers. So, but it'll be available. But it was a huge team effort, and I'm really excited to share all the wonderful things the city has done. And excited to have whoever can be there too.
Fantastic. And there is a bit of a networking hour with some community organizations and the like, also happening at 2 o'clock. Okay, that's tomorrow. Ombud items, I don't have any big things. The main thing that we heard about this week was police technology. Are there any subcommittee updates? I know we've kind of skipped over these. Anybody have one? Councilmember Kritzer?
I can just give a brief update that I have requested of our legislative coordinator for us to schedule a meeting of the Tenant Protection Subcommittee, and we plan to meet the 3 of us to be able to, since we have a new configuration, to newly elect a chair per the rules that we're going to be adopting in general for subcommittees, and then also to kind of organize ourselves and get questions to the staff, so that way we can set up and get to a staff meeting to review some of those policies.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other subcommittee reports at the moment? Okay. And okay, the little list. So Tomorrow is State of the City. Next Tuesday, 6 p.m. is Council Picture Day. These are our individual portraits, not the group portrait. But between meetings next week, we will be having Picture Day. Council Conversations is next Thursday, Redmond Middle School. 7 to 9 p.m., March 19th. Folks are registering online. We heard a little bit, council leadership heard a little bit about that today. You don't need to register online to participate. The way this will work for our new council members is to help you understand what to expect. We'll kind of, folks will be gathering a little before 7, and we will encourage folks just to meet one another. There will be round tables spread out, or lunch tables, whatever shape they are, spread out throughout the gym. And folks, you'll be invited to just sit down at a table and engage with folks who are at your table, answer their questions, hear what's on their minds. If you are new and you'd like to sit with a buddy for the first one, that's totally okay. It is a noticed public meeting. We will encourage folks after about 20 minutes or so to feel free to switch tables, that kind of thing. And we do have one member of the Lake Washington School Board who is also joining us, and they'll be able to specifically answer any questions on behalf of our school board partners. Does anybody have any questions about next Thursday? Vivek and I are going to talk to some Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts right before that, so we'll be all tuned in on community engagement. Yeah, Councilmember Kritzer and then Council Vice President.
I'll just say one of my favorite things to do in these council conversations for new council members just to share is to just start by having a go around, like at whatever table you're at, and give people the opportunity. Sometimes that can take a lot of the 20 minutes, but it gives you a good sense of what are the different issues on everyone's mind where they might be able to share where in Redmond they live, and then what kind of issue is most important to them. So if you need kind of a warm-up question, I always find that to be a good one, and then it really sparks a lot of great conversation from there.
Absolutely, and please do share out the information that's previously been shared. Council Vice President.
Thank you. And just to note for the timing of it, next Thursday it is from 7 to 9. Typically, they're 5 to 7. They're not typically at 7 p.m. It is a little bit later because of the location of this, since we will be at Redmond Middle and other events that are going on. So working with community to make this time work.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing to note is that on the 24th, we have our first round of commission interviews. So we will be meeting at 6:30 on the 24th, a little bit early, to have those conversations. Looking forward to meeting those folks. Last call, council talk time. Oh, 2 hands. Councilmember Parsi.
Two things. One is for the commission interviews. I am curious if it is possible for us to be notified of potential disclosures for affiliations, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what word I'm looking for, but potential disclosures that we should know about. I think I heard one from Planning Commission that was disclosed during the meeting. I don't know if that would be helpful or possible, but that could be good to know.
Give me an example of what kind of disclosure, like a conflict of interest?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah. For example,
Sure.
say someone working at a company who might have, interest in certain things.
Okay, so what typically happens, I see Mayor Bernie has some thoughts too, what typically happens is prior to these interviews, the clerk will email you a packet which has the application and resume and materials for that. They don't get posted publicly, but they come to you in email, and if you have questions, you can always touch base with staff. These are recommendations from the mayor, and our job is to confirm. Do you have any additional thoughts?
Because it's an unpaid position, a volunteer, that has never been something that we have concerned ourselves with. You can see in their resume, like their job and things like that, employment. I have not, I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah,
but,
let us know. Yeah, if you spot something, we would love to know. Okay. Did you have 2 things? 1 thing?
The other one is, in the last meeting, a few members of the public brought questions about Old Firehouse. If we have time and want to have that discussion, I would love to hear more from you about that in terms of auctioning of the items. And also I was curious to learn more about our preservation plan and what we've documented to have preserved.
Sure. So the couple of things there. We do have, my understanding is that Councilmember Soni has time scheduled in her committee for our next update on the Teen Center next steps, as well as the event that is taking place. We did get some information from the Parks Director around what steps have been taken on preservation and the policy that was utilized to surplus. So my instinct, unless the mayor has other thoughts, but my instinct is if you have immediate questions for the Parks Director, to just go ahead and follow up with the Parks Director. Am I missing something else in there?
Sounds good. I'll reach out to the Parks Director.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer?
Thank you. I would follow up. I'm glad, appreciate Councilmember Soni making time on her agenda to prioritize us having a discussion on next steps on the Teen Center. Because I do think to be able to follow up on our commitment to make sure that the steps forward are as expedient as possible and that we're centering teen voices and community input in this process, we do need to make sure that we have kind of this connect on that with council sooner than later. So I appreciate that. And I think being clear, because we did get some, if we can get any additional clarity on, which I think we did get via email, but just to be able to share out more broadly about the reasons why certain things were auctioned off would be helpful. So appreciate that. I was just going to say something fun as an ending thing.
Sure. I will just confirm that I personally had my check-in with Director Hamilton today. We've actually been trying to schedule this for a while, and we did discuss this issue. I also had my monthly check-in with Councilmember Soni today, and so I have been made aware in a few different ways that we definitely want to schedule the time for that, and it is an important conversation, and we're making the time for that at the committee coming up. So if you have questions ahead of the committee, or you have concerns, or want to make sure that something in particular is included, my recommendation would be to speak with the Parks Director early, and the packets for that do go out this week. And you can also touch base with our colleague, Councilmember Soni. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yes, and go ahead, Councilmember Kritzer.
I was just going to share that at the SCA networking event this last week, Mayor Bernie and I were there, and we got to hear from the FIFA, the local FIFA organizing team about some of the World Cup things happening. And there was a raffle for a really amazing sign. It's like a historic sign for the upcoming event, World Cup event that's going to be happening right here in our region. And Mayor Bernie won. So you can go check it out in the mayor's office if you want to see this amazing light up sign that we got.
Should have brought it down here tonight, but I didn't think about that.
I think at some point the mayor should bring it down and light it up in one of our meetings as we get excited for World Cup. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. The last thing on the list from council leadership is just to know, today we received the materials back from the legislative coordinator on the matrix from our retreat. So we just got it today. We haven't had a chance to really dive in, but look forward to having that in front of you in next steps very soon. Councilmember Forsyth.
Just one thing of note, while we were talking about the Old Firehouse conversation, I had a community member that I've been engaged with this whole time reach out about the celebration that's coming up, and I found out that there will be multiple bands performing, and they're honoring the history of the facility by trying to find a band from each decade to celebrate the legacy, and there will be amplification and a stage, and they're doing some really fun planning for that event, so honoring the history, and just sounds like it's shaping up to be a nice celebration.
Well, thank you. We look forward to learning more. All right, I promised Councilmember Parsi we would only be 10 minutes, so we are at time, and there are no other items on our agenda tonight, so we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.